Coming up on Locked On NBA Daily. The Spurs got the best of the Pistons last night, but what did we learn in what could be a potential NBA Finals preview? Meanwhile, a lot of the top teams in the East have the same problem. We'll tell you what it is and who is best positioned to overcome it in the playoffs. And finally, the Knicks and the Cavs square off tonight in a game with plenty of playoff repercussions. Locked On NBA Daily starts now.
You are Locked On NBA, your daily NBA podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On NBA Daily, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. However you're tuning in on YouTube or on your podcast app, thanks for making us your first listen every day. I'm Wes Goldberg, and today we're talking about a big game between the Spurs and the Pistons last night, potential fatal flaws for the top teams in the East, and looking ahead to a couple of important games tonight. We're doing it with the help of Locked On's local experts. I have two of the best with me, as always. From the Locked On Nuggets podcast, he's a senior NBA writer for the Action Network. It's Matt Moore. Matt?
Absolutely sick game last night, Pistons Spurs. Absolutely sick game. Just like high level intensity. Felt like both teams really going at it. Like these kind of games are what we need more of, and I thought it was absolutely fantastic. Just absolutely hyped off that game.
From the Locked On Bulls podcast, Bears and Bulls creator for Bleacher Report, it's Haize.
I enjoy just watching any basketball that's not the Chicago Bulls at this point. So yeah, it was a great game.
Amen, Haize. I feel the same way about the Miami Heat these days. Our play-in tournament hopefuls there. We have a lot to get to today. We're going to start with Spurs Pistons. Safe to say that this is a potential NBA Finals matchup. The game was close at halftime. Spurs roll in the second half. Here's more on what swung the game from Locked On Pistons host Ku Khalil.
Victor Wembanyama completely dominated this game. He could have shot 0 of 30 in this game, and I would have came on here and said he dominated the game. Being at a game like this and being able to see how he just changes everything on the floor, it's crazy. I watched the Pistons get deterred from even going up with shots, from even dribbling to the paint because he's there. He had 6 blocks in this game. You could have given him just 15 to try and paint accurately just how many shots and possessions he ended for the Detroit Pistons. I have not seen somebody dominate a game in which the way Wemby did in this game. It was a defensive masterclass.
Might as well start there with Wemby. You saw the Pistons try to get physical with him early in this game, but didn't throw him off. 21 points, 17 rebounds, 6 blocks, 4 assists, a steal. Matt, did you come away from this game with a better sense of how Wembanyama and the Spurs can handle the physicality that they might see in the playoffs?
Yeah, I think so. We'll talk a little bit more about Detroit coming up in a little bit. And one of the things I think mattered here, like styles make fights. And I think the Spurs are in a unique position where they're not a finesse team. I don't think they're like an overly physical team yet. But I also don't think that the Pistons necessarily have the kind of presence to be able to directly attack Wembanyama in this type of way. The other thing is that they have good finishers in transition. Like Ron Holland last night was absolutely tremendous in the first half. Like he was just so good. But they don't have like crazy strong guys to go up and through Wembanyama, which is the best way to do it. When he's got the ability, like that shot that he blocked when it was Cade's floater at the apex, like I don't know what you do about that. Like, I just don't know what you do about it. And a lot of this is going to have to be you isolate him and move him away from as far as possible, and then you're going to have to be able to shoot. And the Pistons not being able to is a real kind of deterrence. On the other end, I do think the Spurs are really physical offensively because Castle, who's just a demon last night, and Fox are so fast and athletic that they're able to really get into you. I thought that the Spurs really used their athleticism, and this is an underrated thing about San Antonio. And I don't think we ever think of San Antonio because of like the lingering ideas of like the Duncan and the beautiful game Spurs, but that was a decade ago. Like this team's super athletic. They are a super athletic team. And if you try and out physical them, I think you're going to be in a little bit of trouble because of how well they execute.
Yeah, I mean, I think physicality is still going to be the thing to watch for them as the season goes on, and definitely in the playoffs, how Wemby deals with that specifically. But last night, I mean, it was a masterclass. Like it almost any flaw that you saw in that, he found a way to overcome it. Wemby's such a difficult player to game plan for on offense or defense because the things that he's able to do are just not natural. They are unnatural. So like, how do you game plan for that? You can't. You just got to hope that you catch him at the right time. But I think watching a game like that, it just it proves that the Spurs may be a little bit further ahead in their ability to battle out in playoff style basketball. But then again, Detroit's a young team who themselves haven't really gone on long playoff runs yet. So we don't know quite for sure yet in that one either. So I think just continue watching them over the season, how they continue to play. Health is still the biggest thing for them. If Wemby's healthy, they can go very far in the playoffs.
I found what I found interesting in this game was in that first quarter, the Spurs come out the gate strong. Pistons call a timeout. Clearly in that timeout, they say, we got to be more physical. Get up into these guys, specifically get into Wemby. They come out. Cade throws a tough shot at Wemby. Next play, Jalen Duren throws a tough shot at Wemby. Wemby comes back down and just hits a three-pointer. And I thought that was really interesting and descriptive of maybe the way that they're going to try to approach this. So, hey, you could be as physical as you want. We're going to be as physical as we can be. But at the end of the day, we've got the alien. We've got the guy. We've got the 7'5" guy who can shoot threes. And the fact that they didn't necessarily, like, they amped up their physicality without playing into Detroit's game, I thought that was a really mature way to approach that game. That game went in through different swings. Like I said, Spurs come out strong, Pistons battle back, and then that third quarter happens, and the Spurs pull away, and they did most of that, guys, with Victor Wembanyama on the bench, right? Like, they really pulled away with Luke Cornett and some other role players on the court. I don't know. I think this Spurs team, Matt, the way that we talk about it, you mentioned, like, we don't really think about them as being athletic or whatever it is. I think we also just view them as Wemby, and that's it. Or at least that's kind of the way they're talked about nationally. This is a deep roster with a lot of talent on it.
Yeah, I think it's actually kind of funny the way we talk about it, because I'm just like, look, the best player for me on San Antonio this year has been Stephon Castle. I think he's been the best Spurs player night to night. Wemby's presence is so impactful because of the height and just the freakishness, right? Like, he's more impactful just by standing there. But if we're talking about, like, actually playing, like, I think Stephon Castle's been their best player. And, like, his shooting numbers last night, 16 points on 16 shots, not great. But he was so relentless, and 11 dimes to go with it. Devin Vassell, and Vassell was 7 of 11 from 3, and that's a big point. Again, there's a lot of this is like that highlights some of the issues with Detroit. But Vassell was also doing stuff like when they closed out on him, he got to the mid-range and was hitting pull-up shots off of the drive. Those little things are really important. They are a really complete team. But they also made 18 threes last night, 18 of 40. Their formula is like, hey, we have Wembanyama, so you can't take layups, and we're going to shoot from 3. How about that? And that's like a very tough formula, I think, for teams to beat. I do think there's some counters for it that they're going to face in the playoffs, but I do think that their overall formula, their structure is really good.
I want to jump in here because the Spurs now 8-1 against the top 3 seeds in each conference. Haize, you think about this formula that the Spurs have. The fact that they win against the best teams. They continually win these games. Do we need to talk about them? We've already talked about them as a contender, but do we need to maybe talk about them as something more than that? Perhaps even the favorites, given what they've shown so far?
No, I don't think so. Not yet. I mean, regular season basketball is very different from playoff basketball. And I think that that's what it is. Like, the Spurs are a very, very, very good team, and they're a very good regular season team. But I think we got a lot left before we can start saying that they're going to have that success in the postseason. You have to live it before you can say it, because we've seen teams be successful in the regular season before and not be able to carry that over into the playoffs.
Yeah, as I love you, buddy, but man, you get caught up in recency bias as well as anybody I know in the industry.
I'm just asking questions.
Whatever is happening right now is definitely what's going to occur. You know what? One of the things that we saw last year, the Houston Rockets were absolutely phenomenal against great teams last year. Like, that was like a big thing that they held on to. They were 15-10 with the 5th best point differential versus top 10 teams going into March 1st. And everybody was like, they've beaten all these teams in the Western Conference. Like, they have this record against all these teams. And I was like, I just don't think this is predictive. And it's not. Like, there's just very little evidence of being good against the top. Now, one of the things is, if you're not good against the top teams, you're less likely to win the title. So it's like better than not be. It's better to be good versus them. It's better to win games than lose them. How about that? I continue to just kind of go this way. 2024, Thunder make their first real run, but they're inexperienced. They lose in the first round, or in the second round, rather. The Detroit Pistons last year make their first run. They lose in the first round. Wembanyama's never been in a playoff series. Stephon Castle's never been in a playoff series. Dylan Harper's never been in a playoff series. Fox has been in 1, right? Vassell's been in, I think, 1. Keldon Johnson's been in, I think, 1, if they were on that 2019 team. But like, no, like they do not have. I think the Spurs are awesome and deserve a lot of credit, and they are calming. Like you better get your titles in now, because like this is going to go badly for the league the rest of the decade with Wembanyama. But I am unconvinced that they are ready to go ahead and go for the title this year. I think like a second round out is a perfectly fine performance for the San Antonio Spurs.
They're certainly not rushing things, although they are far ahead of schedule based on what anybody thought they could do this year. I do agree, for the record, the Thunder are still got to be considered the favorites here, but these Spurs, man, they just keep passing these tests. We did have questions about the Pistons shooting all season. That was very apparent in last night's game. We're going to talk about whether or not they can overcome it in the playoffs, but other potential fatal flaws for every other team in the East as well. We're going to talk about that after this. Today's episode of Locked On NBA Daily is brought to you by Indeed. Workplace chaos, deadlines stacking up, inbox overflowing, and the one position that you have to fill still sitting open. When the pressure's on and you need the right hire, this is a job for Sponsored Jobs. Indeed Sponsored Jobs helps you reach the people who actually fit what you're looking for: skills, experience, location, so you're not just hoping that the right candidate stumbles across your post. And here's a stat that says it all. In the minute that I'll be talking to you, companies like yours will make 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. So if you're hiring, spend less time searching and more time interviewing candidates who check all of your boxes with Indeed Sponsored Jobs. Spend less time searching and more time actually interviewing candidates who check all of your boxes. Less stress, less time, more results. When you need the right person to cut through the chaos, this is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your job the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now and support our show by saying that you heard about it on this podcast, Locked On NBA. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? This is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs. Welcome back to Locked On NBA Daily. The best way to support the show is to subscribe on YouTube. We are Monday to Friday at 1 p.m. Eastern, wherever you get your podcasts. So on yesterday's show, we did a segment called Fatal Flaw or Flesh Wound for the Western Conference contenders. Today, we're going to do the same thing for the Eastern Conference. The idea is that we're going to identify the biggest flaw for the top 6 teams in the standings and then ask whether or not they can overcome that flaw on their way potentially to the finals. We'll start with the Detroit Pistons, and this one is shooting. It's got to be shooting. This was apparent last night. They went 19% from 3. Haize, fatal flaw or flesh wound for Detroit?
Man, I would like to say with their brand of defense and how tough they are, it's probably a flesh wound. But when you pair that with the fact that this is the first time they've been at this level and with these expectations being the number 1 seed, more than likely heading into the playoffs, I probably say that it is a fatal flaw. Like we've seen teams like OKC be able to overcome shooting being a problem for them. They have so much defense that is ridiculous, and even then we've seen series where it's come to hurt them, and they've been in the playoffs for years now in a row. So I say that can be a fatal flaw this season. After this season, I won't say maybe as much.
There's a tangential point here I want to make because I noticed it last night and it really stood out. You need shooting for Detroit because their win profile is they really are dependent on foul advantage to hold the offense up. They're 5th in offensive free throw rate, and they are 3rd in offensive rebound percentage. If you actually look at the numbers, like Detroit's 15th in the effective field goal percentage, the reason the shooting feels so big is when in those games when they're not able to win on the margins. They are awesome at extra possessions. They generate a ton of turnovers defensively, number 1 in the league. Okay, so they generate a bunch of turnovers. They get to the foul line and they get second chance opportunities. Those margin plays are really difficult against teams that play disciplined. So last night, San Antonio had the same number of free throws as Detroit. Detroit has this awesome record, right? Like they have this really awesome record at 42-14. 50% of their regular season losses have come versus teams who average fewer fouls than league average. And if you go like, well, it's half and half, you got to think about all the random losses that you're going to have in there with schedule losses or guys being out or whatever. Half of their losses come to these teams that just don't put them at the line. That's a really deeply concerning stat when you get into the playoffs and you face disciplined defenses with a tighter whistle. So, yes, Detroit needs their shooting. If they go on a heater, this team can make the finals. But to me, this is why I do not think that Detroit's going to make it out of the conference finals. I think Detroit's going to make it the conference finals and lose there because not just because of their shooting, but because they're so dependent on these other factors that the other team will limit when we get into a playoff series.
To your point, Matt, teams like the Celtics have made a living these last couple of years of winning those margin battles. If I'm a Detroit Pistons optimist, my counter would be, well, Victor Wembanyama is not in the Eastern Conference side of the bracket, so we don't have to deal with that guy. We're second in the league in points in the paint. If we could just score in the paint and just hit enough threes, we don't have to be great. Maybe that's the way to do it. But to your point, like a lot of things got to go right for this team. And when the spacing is what it is, man, like it was rough last night. And the Spurs dared them to shoot from three. And maybe not every team has Victor Wembanyama, but that is going to be the formula, right, in the playoffs when you're playing these Detroit Pistons. Next one, the Boston Celtics. This team is just jump shot dependent. They don't get into the paint. They don't get to the free throw line. I know a lot has changed for Boston. This hasn't. This is a team that is very dependent on jump shooting. Matt, fatal flaw or flesh wound?
Can you feel the disdain from Wes Goldberg as he describes this jump shooting team?
In other words, unethical basketball.
Unethical basketball.
Unethical basketball.
By the way, they're 30th in free throw rate. Boston is. If we're gonna speaking of unethical, they don't draw any fouls. You're right. I think another kind of factor with them that's actually like a fatal flaw that might get a little bit exposed. Their defensive rebounding has gotten way better, especially with Vucevic. They're up to 11th, but that's been a little bit of a bugaboo for them this season. They don't force any turnovers. That's, I think, a little bit of an issue when you just let the teams kind of run. But ultimately, yeah, like I just question if they're going to be able to handle teams putting pressure at the rim. Their numbers are really good. I just don't know if I trust it. They allow the fewest shots at the rim of any team in the league because they pack that paint. However, defensively, they give up the third most threes, in the league. They give up a really high percentage of those. So it does kind of run into, they're still subject to the variance plays, to Wes's point of this is what the Knicks did last year. The Knicks didn't have like some sort of secret formula that beat Boston. The Celtics missed all their threes and the Knicks made theirs. And that was enough. They leave themselves open to these windows, even though they're less dependent on them than they were last year.
Haize, fatal flaw, flesh wound for Boston.
I'll say flesh wound. They're so good. They're so well coached. I'll say it's a flesh wound for Boston. Still think this is going to be one of the most dangerous teams in the playoffs. So I'll say it's a flesh wound just because I think they can win the title this year.
It's like a flesh wound, but you just ignore it. You just don't even bother putting the bandage on, and maybe it can turn into like a fatal. Like it gets infected and turns into a fatal flaw.
Yeah, there you go.
The Knicks. This one has to be defensive consistency. Haize, fatal flaw, flesh wound. We just don't know what to expect from this team on the defensive
this is fatal flaw for them. Fatal flaw, huge flaw. If they anything that's going to take them down, that's going to be it. I would say, like, not to say they're a very talented team, but if they can't have consistent defense with that energy that they need to give. A lot of the teams, even teams below them in the East, can beat them in a 7-game series, I would think. So I think it's a huge fatal flaw for them.
This is tough. This is actually like a little tough. So there's not a lot of evidence that they're actually that susceptible because their offense is so high. And Jalen Brunson, I want to give him credit because like he's just playing out of his mind right now on defense. Like he's giving such great effort. Now I worry about that wearing him down and injuries kind of dragging him into the mud a little bit because he's a small guard. We have seen a lot of evidence that the Towns Brunson combos don't work, but when Brunson's playing this hard, it makes up for a lot of those issues. I don't know. I think it's definitely I think it's a flesh wound. I think the Knicks are. Man, I think the Knicks are the most likely team to come out of the Eastern Conference still. When I kind of look at their floor and their ceiling, I know it's hard to trust them, but they have made the conference finals 2 years in a row. They do have, I think, a formula that's a little bit better, and they're getting better as the season goes on. I thought they were going to spiral off when things got bad there for a while. The way they've responded have me pretty bullish on this team.
Haize,
no, I agree. Yeah. No counter to that. I mean, I understand the point that he's coming from. I think Matt hit on everything there.
Next we have the Cavaliers. And this is less of like an X's and O's thing, and this is more of bright lights, right? We've heard Jared Allen talk about it before. We've seen this Cavaliers team shrink in big playoff moments, And then at the trade deadline, they add James Harden. And I think this is the only question that people have about Cleveland. Nobody doubts the talent on this roster. I think you could argue that this Cavaliers team is as talented as any roster in the Eastern Conference. But this is a team that has, over the last couple of years, shrunk on the biggest stage. Haize, fatal flaw or flesh wound?
Man, I'll say fatal flaw. I just don't trust. I don't trust them at all. And I think anything in a 7-game series that can be exploited by the Cavs, I just don't trust them right now on top of James Harden. So I'll say it's definitely a fatal flaw.
I want to dig in on this, Haize, because I think it's a blind spot for me.
Okay.
What don't you trust? Like, is it that you feel like Donovan Mitchell doesn't make shots in the clutch? Is it defensive performance? Do you feel like Jared Allen gets scattered? Like, we've seen this across two coaches, which is part of like the equation here. Like, what is it about them that you feel? Because I look back at last year, just as like an anecdotal thing here, they had the injuries, yes, but also they were leading until late in that game 1, and then the whole thing unraveled. And then game 2 was even worse. Whereas like they just collapsed like a flan in a cupboard late in that game without a bunch of guys. But it took like another Tyrese Halliburton like clutch maestro performance for them to take that 2-0 lead. They win either one of those games, and I think that series goes longer and maybe gives the Cavs a chance to get back on track. What is it about them that you see is like the problem with this?
I mean, I think it's a combination of all those things, right? Like Donovan Mitchell, my concerns that I had over him in the clutch a few years ago, that's gone. So I eliminate the Donovan Mitchell part of it. I think Donovan Mitchell will be fine in the clutch. It's the pieces around, like, it's just not consistent enough. And I think, yeah, Jared Allen is a little bit of a concern there. Having James Harden is a huge concern there now because we don't even know what he's going to look like in the playoffs. So that's another huge concern for a team that's already kind of had drop-offs in the playoffs before. Here's the thing. I don't know if the Cavs are ready to do what's needed to adjust as a 7-game series goes on. The story of the series, I don't know if they're ready to make those micro adjustments game to game.
I think that's well said. We have 2 more teams to talk about in the Eastern Conference. Plus, I want to talk more on tonight's games. We have another big game in the East between the Knicks and the Cavs. We'll talk about what both teams have left to prove and why this game could be pivotal for playoff positioning. We'll talk about that next. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Ever wanted to experience the NBA Finals live and in person? FanDuel is giving you the chance to turn that dream into reality with their NBA sweepstakes. Here's how it works. Use your profit boost on any NBA future, and you'll automatically be entered for a shot to win an NBA Finals trip for 2. That's right, flights, tickets, the whole experience. You hear us talking about the NBA Finals a lot on the show. We're talking about it today. If you're already looking at the board and thinking about which team can make a deep run, this is the perfect time to lock it in. I love futures this time of year, whether it's picking a team to win the championship or grab a conference title. It adds that extra layer of excitement to every game down the stretch. And now, not only can your picks cash in, but it can also send you to the finals. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Use your profit boost on an NBA future and get entered for your chance to win a trip to the NBA Finals. Play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Thanks for making Locked On NBA Daily your first listen every day. The Locked On Podcast Network has a show for every team. Check out Locked On Spurs and Locked On Pistons for more on today's top stories. Before we move on to tonight's games, 2 other teams in the Eastern Conference that we have to talk about because we're just doing the top 6 in each conference over these last couple of days. The Raptors. I don't know that we consider them a contender, but if they do have a fatal flaw, it's going to be shooting for them. Matt, fatal or flesh wound?
I mean, it's fatal. I just, to me, this is, I'm going to be a little bit of a hater here. It's just like, this is a Brandon Ingram thing. I'm not going to buy into this team with Brandon Ingram as their guy. I think Scotty Barnes has been awesome this year. He's been so incredible. I like a lot of their talent. I actually kind of wonder if we're sleeping on the Raptors' potential to make a run a little bit. I'm not going to be surprised if we're in mid-May and it's like, wait, the Raptors are up 3-2. Are the Raptors going to make the conference finals? Like, I'm not going to be surprised if that happens because I think that their formula of defense, athleticism, and a little bit of shot making is good. But I don't trust Brandon Ingram as the number 1 engine for any team that's going to make a conference finals.
That's fair. No, that's completely fair. I think the Raptors are a really good team. I don't see them as a team that's going to go far in the playoffs. Like, I think they're a good regular season story. Trusting Brandon Ingram. Then on top of that, like, I like Scotty Barnes. Make no mistake about it. But there's still some inconsistencies with Scotty Barnes as well there. Like, I think this team is going to make a big move in the offseason that may change my view for this going into next year. But right now, no, I agree with Matt here.
The other team that we got to talk about here is the Philadelphia 76ers. And like a lot of the teams we've already talked about, again, with them, the issue is shooting. They are bottom 10 in threes made. They are 26th in overall field goal percentage. Haize, fatal flaw or flesh wound for the Sixers?
I'll say I maybe I just have too much belief in the 76ers. I'll say it's a flesh wound. I don't still have them necessarily going extremely far, but I'll call it a flesh wound just because I love the Sixers roster. I love Tyrese Maxey. I love what they've been able to do as a team. Joel Embiid is going to have less pressure on him than he's ever had before. I think with the way that this team's grown this season, I'll say flesh wound.
This is going to be, I think, one of the most if you're wondering, like, how are you guys not talking about health? Like, it's a given. Everybody's got to be healthy.
Yes.
Like, everybody's got to be healthy.
Well said.
Right. I got to do like a little bit of a deep dive. Are you surprised? Like, they're 25th in effective field goal percentage. Haize, are you surprised by that number? Because I was surprised by that number.
I was. They feel like they should be higher than that.
It feels like they make all these shots. Like VJ's like knocking down 4 threes, and Maxey's incredible, and they've got all these guys that have given them such good minutes, and instead it's like, no, like actually they don't actually make that many, and it's not actually that good. I think the other problem though here is the injuries. It's like, what do they look like with Embiid versus without Embiid? Because you have two different teams that get mixed into their overall numbers, and you kind of have to consider those. Like, for example, with Joel Embiid on the court, this team is plus 10.1 in half-court offense compared to off. With Paul George, plus 6.5. With Jared McCain, who's now Oklahoma City Thunder, it's plus 5.9. Like Oubre's plus 2.6, Maxey's plus 2.3. So it's kind of the bench guys where the offense gets worse. It's Dominique Barlow, it's Quentin Grimes, it's Andre Drummond. So I do kind of wonder, like, maybe the actually healthy version of this team looks differently, but I wonder if they have a different fatal flaw that we're not aware of because we haven't seen it as much.
Yeah, maybe the fatal flaw is the depth. Maybe it's the bench, right? And maybe if Joel Embiid can stay healthy, the numbers bear it out, Matt. Like you just said, like they're talented. The big if for them obviously is Embiid, maybe one of the biggest X factors in the Eastern Conference if we were going to do that segment. Let's move on to the games tonight with a segment that we like to call the real question. We'll start Knicks at Cavs tonight. The Knicks 2-0 in the regular season series. The Cavs, though, are 4-point favorites in this game at home. The last game of the regular season series, so the Knicks have already won this tiebreaker, but the real question is, guys,
what is real?
Is there anything that these teams can show you in the regular season tonight and going forward over the next 20 plus games that will make you more confident in them in the playoffs? Haize, start with you.
No, I don't think so. I think that I'm like their strengths and weaknesses are pretty well documented at this point. So I don't know if there's. I can't say that there's anything that I need to see from them that'll make me feel that much stronger about their chances.
I need to see Evan Mobley have a great game.
What's a great game for Evan Mobley for you?
Oh, man. It doesn't have to be crazy. I don't need him to score 30, right? If he has 18 and 8 and the defense is elite and he's got like 3 stocks and they're winning his minutes, that to me matters a lot because like in that OKC game, which was a perfect opportunity for them to keep the win streak going, he was invisible. And that's a real problem.
Yeah.
If you're going to beat this Knicks team, you got to match them in physicality on the inside. And by them, I mean Mitchell Robinson. And like, that's a big deal here. If Jared Allen has these games every now and again, as much as like his inconsistency we talked about earlier, he has games where like he's awesome. This would be a really good time for a Cavs front court shows up game, because otherwise I'm going to have worries about this matchup from a playoff perspective.
Other game I want to talk about tonight, Celtics at Suns. Suns are going to be without Devin Booker and Dylan Brooks. Jaylen Brown questionable for Boston, but still, these are two teams that have been among the best stories of the season. The real question is,
what is real?
Matt, who has exceeded your expectations more this season between Boston and Phoenix?
Phoenix. I made this argument this morning on Twitter about Jordan not being coach of the year. I understand Joe Mazzulla's not had Jason Tatum and they're second in the Eastern Conference. I get it. We thought the Phoenix Suns were a joke. I was one of the few people in preseason that was like, I kind of think this team is decent. And even I didn't think they would be this good. Like they're well over 500 with a legitimate chance of getting out of the play-in tournament and being an actual playoff spot in the West.
Yeah.
Devin Booker's missed 13 games. It's crazy. This team should not be anywhere near the playoffs in the West. They should be way closer to Memphis. It should be like Phoenix should be well below the play-in tournament and then like a drop to all the tankers. They're not a tanker. but God, they play connected. They play smart. They get the most out of their roster. Phoenix has blown away my expectations. If you told me the Celtics were number 2 in the Eastern Conference, I've been like, man, Maz did it again, huh? As far as expectations go, it's got to be Phoenix.
Yeah, it's definitely Phoenix. I listen, my preseason expectations for Phoenix were not high at all. But the conversation about Boston and Indianapolis or Indiana that we had at the beginning of the season, which one of these teams would be better? I always thought that Boston still had a chance to make the playoffs. I didn't have them being this good, but I always thought they would make the playoffs. The Suns, I was completely out on. I didn't think they would be good at all this season. And it just goes to show why team construction is something that we need to talk about more. It's not always just about the names. Sometimes it's about how the players on the court fit together, the way that they're used, those type of things. And the Suns are a perfect example of that. They are a very fun basketball team to watch. They're damn good this season. And I would not be surprised if they make the playoffs outright this year.
Not a lot of people had the Suns having a better record than both the Warriors and the Clippers at this point in the season, and probably will finish with that. No surprise, I was very low on the Boston Celtics, so I'm going to go ahead and say the Celtics exceeded my expectations here.
Reign of your existence, the Boston Celtics.
You know what? At this point, man, whatever.
Just embrace it.
I respect it. I respect it. Joe Mazzulla's done a heck of a job.
You want teams that you hate that you can respect. That's actually better.
Yeah, not everybody has to be the Buffalo Bills. You know what I mean? Like, somebody deserves your respect. Last one here. Dejounte Murray, sidelined for more than a year with an Achilles injury, is set to return tonight when the Pelicans host the Warriors. It's a great story. You got to feel great for Dejounte Murray coming back from that devastating injury. But the real question is,
what is real?
It will be great to see Dejounte Murray back out there. But Haize, have the Pelicans already moved on from the Dejounte Murray era?
Yeah, I think it's clear that they have. And Dejounte Murray, when healthy, is a really good point guard. And I wouldn't be surprised if this is basically him auditioning for his next team next season. Just a little bit of time he's going to have left this season. But it's clear that the Pelicans have already moved on. They're in a different direction.
I could have done 5. I could have done a whole segment on Dejounte Murray because I think it's really fascinating. So you talked about have the Pelicans moved on. I think Dejounte Murray's moved on for the New Orleans Pelicans. Did you hear his comments over the offseason about the organization? Nobody came to support him with his surgery. Nobody reached out. That's horrendous. That's just awful, guys. Come on. Like, this is basic stuff about taking care of your people. But on the other hand, people were asking him, like, why are you coming back? This team's like, tanking. Or not tanking, but they're just bad. They don't have a pick. And Dejounte was like, it matters to me. I want to represent New Orleans.
Yep.
That's like the instantly he said that. And I was like, all right, I want good things for Dejounte Murray. Now, the problem is, like, he was good in San Antonio. He went to Atlanta. He couldn't fit with Trey and wasn't good. He came back and then was bad again. So, like, I don't know what to expect here, but I want really good things for Dejounte Murray.
The other part that I loved from that little media session that you're talking about, Matt, is when they also asked, why would you bother playing for a team that's out of the playoffs? And he said, I get paid to be out there.
That's what the money is for.
That's what the money is for. If you like what you heard today, subscribe to Locked On NBA Daily wherever you get your podcasts, including on YouTube. Thank you to Matt and Haize for their expertise every day. Thank you for making the Locked On Podcast Network your first listen. We'll see you right back here tomorrow on Locked On NBA Daily.